What am I saying again?
This is MPW.
MPW.
The podcast.
With your host,
Xylo Aria. Cool.
A podcast about music production
for the everyday musician,
where we learn from experienced studio engineers and each other.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the MPW Podcast. I'm your host, Xylo Aria, and I am really excited to welcome our guest today, Rachel K Collier. So Rachel is a music producer, an incredible live electronic performer, and also runs an awesome YouTube channel. So yeah, really great to have you today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm glad I could finally make the podcast as well.
Oh, no worries. And yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've got so much going on, which is incredible and really nice to see.
Yeah, it has been a busy time. Like we briefly just said now, off air, obviously lost a lot of work with COVID, but then managed to kind of pick things up a little bit. And then, made the little Ableton course and things, just kind of filling time. And so it's fun, but busy actually.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds it. And yeah, it's funny. I think that's been the case for some people, that it's kind of been a time for losing work, but also been an opportunity to kind of do things that you probably wouldn't have done otherwise. And it kind of opens up a whole new world of work as well.
Absolutely. Like I've definitely done stuff I wouldn't have ever sat down to do, and it's been quite nice actually as well, because last year I was touring loads. I did the debut album. So last year was actually really focused on like promotion and like album campaigns and stuff like that. So it has been nice just like having no excuse really, just to like go and produce and learn some new techniques and get with, download some new plugins and, spend some hours watching some YouTube tutorials, like all these things that like, I've definitely become more of a YouTube fan myself.
Awesome. So everyone, Rachel also learns off YouTube. So amazing.
I do, yeah. Honestly, there's some great stuff on there, honestly. And I've spent time working on my Patreon, which has been really cool as well. Like, never would have done that stuff if I was still obviously driving around the country with Vicky and Ree, my percussionists. And so it's been, a lot of ups and downs, but it does feel kind of like now, okay, when am I going to play a show again? I'm starting to get the itch a little bit.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. But no, it's good that, and I think especially as a freelancer, you really have to be agile, isn't it, to kind of make it work?
Oh, definitely. You've got to adapt. And I've been like freelancing, most of my career, to be honest. Like even when I've been building up all this electronic stuff, I've been like teaching kids piano. I did that for years, and then teaching workshops and things like that. I've been a cleaner. I've taught in nurseries. I've always been self-employed, right? And always kind of I'm used to that feeling of, damn, I need to make money. Okay, what do I do now? So, yeah, and I think as a musician, as hard as it has been, there are loads of things we can do if you just tap into it in your head and think, right, okay, that's how I can make a bit of cash. Teaching, some people like say, oh, I can't do that. But that was my bread and butter for years, teaching piano, and then the kids got too good then, and I was like, oh god, they're getting really good. I was like I need to practice myself. But I even, when I was first in London, I totally winged it. I was like, ooh, ukulele. I just thought, I'm just going to say I teach everything, singing, ukulele. I was so rubbish. I knew about 4 chords, but that was 4 chords more than the student who came for the lesson. I've been always used to just kind of winging it. And I had a couple of jobs when I was a teenager, Marks and Spencer, and I was like, oh, I hate this. I don't like working for anyone. So I was like, I'm going to have to improvise here and figure out how to make cash. And I think that kind of teenage attitude has probably paid off actually with my career. It's all behind the scenes as well, obviously on Instagram, I'm not there like, hey guys, today I'm going to do my cleaning job or whatever, So people don't really see that side of the hustle behind it, But like, obviously it's really nice because I had to fill out the survey the other day, and it was like, it said like, oh, how is music your hobby or your profession or whatever? And it it actually felt like for the first time in my life, I could just tick the box when it was like, oh, music is everything now. I don't do anything else. And it sounds weird. People probably on the outside think, oh, that's a given, but it hasn't always been like that. So that was really cool just to tick that box where it was like, it's my main thing
Amazing.
now. So
Yeah.
the little things, isn't it, that make, some people say, oh, what's your idea of success? That is ticking a box.
I love it.
And being like, that's my idea of success. I now can live off this kind of career I've built,
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And you know what? That's just the raw truth of it. And I think this is really important for people to hear as well, because I think a lot of people, when they see you kind of doing what you do, they're like, oh, how did she get there? And don't see all of the effort behind that and how long it takes to make that sustainable. So it's just nice to hear the back.
Yeah, I actually tell my mates now as well, like some of my, people I know as well, like new artists. I know it's brutal, but I do say like, I actually say this, and this is what I did. See it as separate things for a minute. There's your artistry and that, and then there's making cash. You need to make a bit of cash to keep doing the artist thing. And I feel like when you are too early on, like, this is how I make money, this is my career, that's just not going to work. So it's kind of like, see it as separate and then gradually try and merge them, So, because the fact is, working sucks, but it means you can buy a new MIDI controller, Yes, you're going to spend all your money that you earn on gear, but at least you can buy that gear. So, I think that's definitely a way I approach it. And, and even still now, there's projects that make money and there's projects that don't make money, but it's like, got to weigh it up and, find the balance there.
Yeah. Oh, so nice to hear about that. I feel like we could do a whole other episode on this.
I know, this has kind of gone off the topic of live performance, isn't it?
And this is great. No, lovely. And I mean, we've kind of talked about the first question a little bit, which I was just going to ask you about your musical journey and how you kind of got to where you are today. Is there anything you want to add to all of the other jobs that you did to...
I guess a bit about my musical journey. I feel like it just totally evolved naturally. I wasn't like in lessons or anything when I was a kid or whatever. I loved singing, and I think when I was about I always my mum had a piano in the house, and I think she used to play when I was kind of small, but then she stopped. She went actually to university when I was quite small, but the piano was always there, and I always was drawn to it, But then it was when I was about 12, I really started to play around with it more when I'd come home from school. And then, as the years evolved, playing with two fingers like an idiot, I kind of realised what notes, sounded nice together.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and then I started to write songs then. I was about 12 or 13. And like I said, just with the keyboard. And my friends were really sweet. They'd come over and I'd play them my songs and they'd think it was the best thing ever, and they would just clap. And that was quite, it gave me probably a lot of encouragement, even though they were probably rubbish. But I think that encouragement from my mates at a young age was probably a really big deal, just to get that a bit of support. And then obviously I got a new keyboard and it had some beats in it. And, I could press one of these beats on the keyboard and then play my chords along with it. But then my dad had this really old tape player thing. I kind of was just curious with, what does this cable do then? And I was like, Dad, can I actually plug my keyboard into there? And then as the years evolved, I just realised I could, plug a little microphone in, I can plug this keyboard in with some of these cheap cables, and just kind of figured it out. And then eventually I spent all my teenage years just writing songs. I did all my friends' GCSE compositions for them. And then eventually I was just I was really into languages and science as well. But then when it came to shove after school, it was I think there's a bit more to this music thing than just Dad's tape player and, and Sibelius. My school was really cool. I had cool teachers and that, cool music teachers, but it was really backwards. There was no computers. And then when I finally went to college, everyone was just like, whoa, like I'd never seen a Mac. I had no clue. But for me, it was just, oh, right, well, this is obvious. This is what I've been wanting to do my whole teenage years, you know? So now I just think, wow, like the amount of stuff that's available now as a teenager is like, my mind would have been absolutely blown if that was me back then, you know?
Yeah.
So I did study music technology. It was a random course. It was a creative course, so which was good because it was really focused on creative aspects of stuff. So actually the first year was really weird. I thought, oh God, I'm on the wrong course. It was like a lot of sound design and like making songs with no rhythm or pitch. In hindsight now, I'm like, oh no, this was cool actually. This probably, actually was a benefit for kind of being open-minded. And it was really lucky. All the other years were like all guys, but my year was like mostly girls.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I think, and Andrew Huang asked me this before, he said, how come you got like just like good relationship with tech? Has it ever been like intimidating for you? And I was like, not really. I was like, but then, and I think a good reason for that would be learning with like I said, the girls, Rhea and Maz in my year. And the fact that it was like, we just became like best friends, and we would just laugh when stuff didn't work and just press every button. And like, it just became a bit of a laugh. And so we just, in the end, we just didn't fear it. It was just like, just get stuck in. You can just figure it out, So I always had that attitude. It was just, even with tech now, I just know I need to sit down for half an hour and read the manual maybe. But I don't really fear it, It's kind of, it's like doing a flipping flat pack from IKEA. It's the same thing, You just got to read the manual and get, or don't read the manual and try and figure it out. You make it up, So I definitely had this cool, like, positive relationship with technology. And it was actually, at college where I saw this dude do this performance. We also had to do these, like, innovative performances. And he was doing some live looping. And then I asked him, how'd you do that? And he was like, oh, it's using Ableton. I'd never heard of it. And I was like, oh, cool. But we didn't really use it on our course, but he just showed me it. And then my tutor gave me a copy of it. And I was like, oh my God. And I just like fell in love with it, Session View. And I only thought it was Session View for years. I didn't know you could actually like produce in it.
Right.
So for me, it was like this live looping kind of thing.
Right.
But anyway, so that was like my first taste of it. And then like fast forward a few years, I was in London. I was doing a lot of top lining, writing melodies and lyrics for DJs and stuff. And I don't know, I had a bit of success doing that, but I just knew I really wanted to like produce the music and not just like the melodies and the top lines and all this. And then, I had some funny experiences with like in studios when it's like, oh, don't touch the mouse. You just do the melodies and all of that. And it was all playing into me. And I was like, you know what, screw this. I was like, I don't care. I'm going to go and produce again. And I was like using Logic. And then I was in the studio one day and this guy I was working with said, to Ben, who's my now manager, he said, why don't you use Ableton? And I was like, Ableton. I was like, I love that program. But I was like, oh no, but you can only like do performances with that, innit? Like live looping. And he just like literally hit the tab key and I was like, oh. And then I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then that was it. I just never looked back. And obviously then I could apply all these cool things I'd been doing in Session View in the actual tracks. I just found it so much more friendly and it just resonated with me in a bigger way. I got myself Native Instruments Machine and that was it then. I was just like, that was it. I was going for it. I was like, I'm going to be a producer. I was terrible, but I was still like, I'm going to do it. And my managers at the time as well, that's when we actually parted ways because they were like, oh no, but come on, you got to write, next top line for Christina Aguilera. I was thinking, no, I do not want to do this. I was like, I'm out. I think in some ways, some people might have thought that was like career suicide for me because I did have, like I said, a bit of success doing that, some song in the charts. I was on a Grammy nominated album and stuff with all the top lining. No, it was definitely not career suicide. It was, I was about to embark on a journey that was going to be slow and long, but a journey that was going to fulfill me more than anything else. So yeah, it's all been a journey from experience, not from watching YouTube videos.
No, I love that. I love that. And like, so two things you mentioned then, and one that, you were saying maybe going down this path was some people might call it career suicide, and that's not what you saw it as. And I think that's so important, because I think people really, especially when you're starting out, don't trust their gut. And I think that's so important. And if something is telling you that that's not the right decision for you, even though everyone else is, to have the confidence to be like, actually, no, this isn't the right thing for me, is a really big thing. And I think a lot of people don't trust that in themselves. So it's amazing to see that you took that decision.
Yeah. Oh no, thanks, Xylo. It was kind of a no-brainer. I just had to do it. And it's funny that you say that as well, people not trusting their gut. I feel like if you have got that urge and drive and motivation to sit there for hours and produce a tune, that is the motivation, that it's in you, And I definitely feel like as well today, you can get confused between, okay, what is your goal? Is it to produce music? That's the goal. Or is it to produce music and get millions of followers? And that's another thing, right? I've learned is different, So it's like, for me, my goal is just to be in the studio and be making music and learning and having fun making music. That is the best it gets. That is it. That is like the culmination of the joy right there. If I can share some tips with people and inspire other people to feel the way I feel, then that's great. I do see it a lot, like people get confuse that with social media and building following and all this. And obviously that is really important. But I think it's another thing to separate in your brain. Okay, don't let that influence how you feel about making music, because that is something I've been through. I would get really down or whatever after I release a tune and, it hasn't hit my expectations or blah, 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 blah. But then I was like, hang on a minute, this isn't right. I'm confusing the emotions of my passion with numbers and figures I can't control.
Yeah. Oh, so true.
That's another thing I've been trying to practice now. It's like just to be really present and enjoy the journey. And the journey is what it's all about, not what happens online or whatever, that kind of thing. So just, and I think regardless of who you are, how many followers or whatever you've got, and I think a lot, my friends who, for example, my friend Mary Spender, I think she practices the same thing. It's like, no, we just got to focus on doing what we love. And I feel like anyone who does what they love, no matter what the outcome, that should be the goal. If you are doing what you love, then that's a great thing. If you need to do a side hustle to earn a bit of cash, that's fine. As long, do you know what I mean? But it's just trying to remember that that's what it's all about,
Oh, so good. So good. And yeah, so true as well. Yeah, it's just so many different sides to think about, but not forget why we're doing it, because it makes us happy. Yeah. And
now just a little tip as well for new producers. What I did was, which I thought was kind of cool, and I think is a good thing to do if you're a new producer, it's actually really hard to fuse a great song with great production. I find that's the hardest productions I do. And I'm trying to write the song and write the production at the same time. So I found when I was starting off, I made a couple of bootlegs. So I took a couple of songs that I loved and I thought, the song's already good, so I don't need to worry about that. The lyrics are already good. The chorus is already good. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is focus on remaking it myself and my way. And I think it's a really nice thing to do when you're just starting to produce, is kind of to make these bootlegs or these covers. That definitely helped build my confidence with my production, because I think one track I did I did a Drake cover and, got quite a few streams on Spotify, and that just felt really good because I was like, oh man, I made this, So that's a little tip I would give to new producers. Even if you can't sing or whatever, find someone who can sing it for you, who's up for it, or, sound better, get someone's voice you could dig up and have a listen to, or play the top line with your instrument or something like that, or a synth. But I definitely recommend that if you're just starting out, because when the songwriting is a process as well. So it's good to, and I think sometimes people get confused as well between oh, I'm going to be a music producer. But it's like, we got to write a track as well. We got to write a good song.
Yeah. No, true. Yeah, for sure. So we are not even on question 2 on our podcast, but this is great. No, we have actually. But no, I was actually going to ask you. So you mentioned a little bit about your first live setup and how it was kind of a bit basic. But do you want to talk me through what was your first live setup, and would you do it a bit differently now knowing what you know?
I mean, I tried loads of setups. Like, you know, the first sort of Ableton setup I took on stage was really different to what it is now. It was APC. It was mainly just clips and scenes. You know, I wasn't even running vocals through Ableton. I had like a lot of the bass riffs and everything with MIDI in simplers and samplers. I had my percussionist, playing the actual hits of my drum parts on her SPDX. It was very kind of MIDI, and yeah, it was cool, but it was, I don't know, it was just something about it that like I said, it just kept evolving. It was a fun show, but I felt like some of the stuff was like unnecessary. It was like, I'm just sort of triggering these parts. I don't really get it. It's been a long time of like conceptualizing, you know? And then it was just like, also it was hard to know when you got like a fusion of track and like an SPD, so playing electronic drums, what is replaying? When you've got me playing MIDI bass lines from Ableton, what am I playing? Like, it's very hard sometimes with electronic music to know what they're actually doing on stage. I think it's actually a problem with electronic production. Yeah. So like, as I was evolving, I was just trying to think, okay, I want to make it more interactive. Now, in terms of looping, like I hadn't grasped how to do that on stage. Yeah, like I said, I wasn't even running my vocals through Ableton. So I had that as like, I had a reverb pedal and stuff, you know? So I gradually then obviously started to explore more with running my vocals through, you know, the sends and all the different, and that was basically because I knew I could have like unlimited vocal effects if I ran through Ableton rather than a big pedal board. So I gradually started doing that. Then I was like, MIDI actually does my head in for live performances. When you've got like so many little synths and sounds and having to change it and rearm the channel and change selectors. And I was like, ugh. And it was just nicer just to, okay, I've got a keyboard here, which makes a noise. Let's just plug that into Ableton and run that through Ableton. And then, you know, I'm not taking up any CPU in Ableton. I can add all these cool, crazy effects, which I could do as well if it was MIDI. But I just kind of started to be drawn more towards the audio side of things. And then I was like, oh man, this is really easy to loop up this audio. So, and then I just started to incorporate more then of like bringing in the live looping element with triggering the stems, and then at the same time figuring out, okay, well, this is more obvious now to the audience. If I'm going to loop up a vocal, it's going to loop back and they're going to see that in action. And then, so it was really about kind of, if I'm going to be playing a big fat bass line here on the mini group, they're going to see me doing that. So that really kind of shaped, it was a lot of concept stuff behind trying to build and grow the show. Then I was like, what is the point in my electronic drums being played electronically with an SPD? Now, this is my personal preference. Obviously, that is totally cool in other situations. Uh-huh. But for me, my tracks are very, you know, groove driven, and actually the human feel on electronic drums is not what I wanted.
Yeah.
So I thought about it for a while, and I was like, and who's my first percussionist, you know, we used to jam together at uni, and she would get her bongos and all of this out, and I was like, why don't we just get the percussion involved? So then we just, you know, then we got live percussion, we got live looping, we got real synths, you know, it just started to evolve to become more of a live show rather than like 3 people on stage or 2 people on stage and nobody knowing what we're doing apart from the singing.
Yeah.
I feel like, what is the point in breaking down your session to this really complicated scenes and blah, 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 if people really can't see what you're doing? Because at the end of the day, when you've got an audience, if you're playing at a festival and all of this, and this is, what I realised, like learning the hard way, not all, like whatever, 2% know what Ableton are, 5% know.
Definitely, yeah.
Obviously it depends on your crowd, but like if it's a festival, they don't know and they don't care. They just want to have a good time. So it's like, how can you fill your own technology satisfaction with a good audience interaction? And I've just been developing it for years, like always adding, always changing. And as the years have gone on, I'm like ditching pieces of gear, bringing in new pieces of gear. Yeah, it was basically then balancing out, okay, another thing I had to learn was you've got to get on stage and you've got 15 minutes to set up. If you've got like 5,000 cables and all this and crazy shit going on, it's just like, oh man. So yeah, as the years have gone on, it's all been a compromise, Everything's a compromise. It's like, okay, is that going to be effective? Are the audience going to be able to understand it? Am I going to enjoy doing it? Does it take 100 things to set up? Do I have enough room in front of me to put this? So there's all these things that you've got to consider. But the only way you can learn it is actually by just going out and doing it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can set up in your studio all day long, but you don't know until you go and put yourself out there and play in a little pub or whatever. Oh God, horrendous feedback on my vocals. Oh God, I got to sort that out. Like all these issues. And I've had them all. Trust me, I've had all the issues. And like I said, as the journey's just gone along, like every live show I'll adapt. Even like little things like Velcroing all my gear down. Like that was like one of the lifesaver ideas. Because it was like, because you can't go on stage and set up this massive rig. You need to set the rig up at the side of the stage and then carry the rig on. So it's like, How are you going to do that with all these pieces falling off? But like, how am I meant to learn that? You only learn this from being at South by Southwest and then all of your gear when the sub's under the stage moving. So it's like, it's just all these little things. And then that's how I end up doing a little bit of musical director work as well. Just like the experience of setting up shows. But yeah, so it's been a journey. And I actually created like a little rack as well to go on stage, because instead of like having an interface, and so I got this little rack, plonk it down, put the laptop on top. It's got my interface in it, my Shure PSM 300 in-ears, and my DI boxes. So my interface is permanently hooked up to my DIs. So I can rock up to the venue and hand them a loom and be like, here we go, guys, here's your XLRs. Like, it's not even any, oh, we need 4 DIs from the cupboard. Like, how many times does that happen? Like, it's just like, and then they give you like one Behringer crap one blah, blah, blah. And then you've got all your levels all over the place. And it was just like, this is terrible. This is not working.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, certainly sounds like it. And do you want to just talk through what a DI does for anyone who hasn't come across it?
So it stands for direct input, isn't it? And it just takes basically, in some venues you can, let's start with the interface. Out the back of the interface, you've got all your line outs. You can have an interface with just a stereo output, which is fine for producing. But if you want to perform on stage with Ableton, I do recommend a multi-output interface, because then you can send your own headphones a click or something like that. You obviously don't want the audience to hear the click. If you've just got one stereo out, then you can't really do that. So I've got a multi-output interface, but that also means not only can I give myself my own mix, I can also separate some of the channels out of my interface. So out the back of my interface, I've got like 8 line outs, and which is a 1/4 inch or jack cable, but sort of industry standard, and better quality is an XLR cable. So all a DI box does is it takes your jack straight into the DI and then converts that then to the XLR, which is better quality and boosts the hell out of the signal. I think that's it. I mean, don't quote me on this. There's probably some flipping, sound engineer listening now. I think it does more than that. And, they got grounding switches and stuff for electrical buzz. But basically, it just makes the signal, it's industry standard XLR. Yeah, louder and XLR.
Yeah, no, cool. I think that's the main things I wanted to cover. So yeah, no, cool. So what would you say your setup looks like now?
So I've still got Push. That's like the centralized controller for me in all of my sets. And yeah, it's just my favorite. I've tried loads. It's so synchronized with Ableton. I don't have to look at my laptop. It's way behind me on the stage. Push is my interface with Ableton. And then I've got my 2 little MIDI controllers, MIDI Fighter Twister and Akai LBT8. They're just really small. Small is good. It does vary. I've been using a lot my Yamaha Reface DX because it fits really nice in front of my push. And it's really versatile synth. It's got like, leads, pads, basses. So I basically manually switch sounds on Sage. I don't even send the MIDI program messages.
Really?
I try to do,
okay.
Yeah, I try to do as little MIDI as possible because I've had funny experiences with MIDI. Like, it's naughty. It sometimes just does its own thing. So what I do is I save my patches on my synths in consecutive order. So I just have to like press a pedal and it's the next sound. So I program it for the set, So I'll make sure that so I'm not like flicking through. It's the next button,
Yeah.
So my setup, for my last headline show, so I have my push, my 2 little MIDI controllers. I have my King Korg, my Mini Brute, my Reface DX, my TC Helicon. So that's a big rig. But the great thing is about it was, obviously that was the album set and show. And I made the album with loads of those synths. So it was really easy to be like, right, I'm playing this sound live because that is the one from the track, So, but in other places, I'll sometimes just like with the DX, add like a new synth solo or, I'm definitely not like religious about keeping the tracks exactly as the productions. I'll mess with the structure or I'll add synth solos. At the end of the day, you're creating a show, And that's something you have to bear in mind. It's like, I'm making a show. So here we go. What am I going to do to like have this great performance, So the King Korg, as annoying and big as it is, when I'm playing that big show, it's so cool when I get to do a big synth solo. Mm-mm. People can see it and it's all interactive.
Yeah.
So, if I'm playing a smaller show, like So Far Sounds or something, I'll maybe ditch one of the synths and just take 2 synths and play one with the bass and one synth for the bass and then one for the pads. But then I've always got my push and MIDI Fighter and Akai LBT8 because push is obviously controlling Ableton, but the 2 other MIDI controllers are doing all the live effects, the monitoring levels in my ears, all of that stuff. There's a lot of mappings going on, global mappings.
Okay.
So
what is global mapping for someone who doesn't know?
Oh, yeah. So basically, like, if I'm doing one song performance, like on YouTube or whatever, I can go crazy and map loads of stuff. But if I'm doing like a 12-song set, when I say global mappings, it's mappings that can apply to the whole set.
Right.
So, stuff on the master, like all the filters, if that makes sense. So you have to make, obviously, in some single song performances where I've gone a bit more all out, I might have to ditch a couple of effects. So one, I've only got so many knobs, and 2, my brain is only so big. So it's kind of like, so it's really about making those compromises between, okay, yeah, right, I'm going to be able to remember that and not remember all of that. Because I've also found a lot of joy in like live looping from scratch sets as well. But they do have limitations because if you have a really loud audience, it doesn't work because your mic is picking up all these people talking.
Yeah.
So these are little things I've learned as well. Just like, you've got to consider the venue and you've got to consider what kind of show it is. And if you're playing a festival, people just want to dance and have fun. They don't want to watch you build up, 5 minutes of loops, basically. So, but yeah, so that's what it's like at the moment. Yeah, it probably will change the next time I play live.
Yeah, no, cool. I mean, it's good to know that it is a completely evolving beast, really, live performance. And it's not that you have one thing and then kind of be doing the same thing.
Oh, yeah, every show, even if it's like in the back end as well. So which line out, which lines am I separating? Okay, I'm going to send the engineer 1 and 2 will be the drums. 3 and 4 will be vocals, effects. Like every show, there'll be some tweaks, that it's like, oh, right. Oh, actually, I hate those DI boxes. And, I'm buying new DIs, things like that, like all the back end.
Yeah, no, cool. And yeah, so it sounds like from your settings, so you were saying you don't really use a lot of MIDI. So you've got your push, which is kind of controlling your Ableton. So your laptop's not really in front of you. And then you've got mainly synths around you and then a couple of MIDI controllers. And what were you saying plays your drums, or do you do that on the push or?
Yeah, so like the synths I'll be playing live, I'll be looping up. Vocals, I'll be singing, I'll be looping up. The MIDI controllers are doing the effects and, like I said, controlling levels. Push is then controlling, obviously, recording all the loops and triggering the stems from the productions. So those drums will be in the stems of the productions triggered by push. And then obviously I got the live percussionists. I got Vicky and Ree now. I've got two of them, two girls. They're amazing. So so what I'll do with the tracks, like I'll obviously remove from these stems and these bounces all the vocals, all the synth parts I'm going to play live, all the percussion. So sometimes the stem might just be like a kick and a snare. And then I'll be playing bass and singing. And then Ree and Vicky will be playing the percussion. But I like to call it a beef up track. Beefs up the performance.
Yeah.
So, because I think there's a lot of stigma around this like backing track thing.
Oh my
but
God.
It's just like, get a grip. Like you cannot create those things live on stage unless you want your audience to watch you produce a track. So it is a show. So the beef up tracks basically, I separate loads of them out, and I like to do this thing where I can digital freestyle. So I can have like scenes where, there's just like one loop, and I can then like trigger another loop, and I can synth solo and rock out for as long as I like. But then the scenes which have a set structure, I can then drop back to that. So it's like the fixed structure can be in certain scenes, and then there's scenes where there's just one little loop, and I can keep adding to that loop, and I can like do a digital freestyle,
Yeah.
So I very much perform a session view.
Yeah, I can understand. And you were talking about looping and how you use Ableton to loop everything. So is that an Ableton plugin that you use, or how is that done?
I just literally do it in the most simple way that you could do it in Ableton. So I just create a channel, set the input for synth 1 that's the input, record arm the channel, and then hit the little circle. That's it. So I've experimented with Looper, and I think it's really cool. But I think when you've got like multiple channels, and because you have to have the monitoring turned on for Looper to record you.
Right. Yeah.
Don't know if that would work for me in a live setting. Because obviously with me, what I can do is I can have, say, 8 channels of vocal pre-armed, but the monitoring can be turned off. So you don't get this like horrible feedback. And I can just have one channel to listen to myself. So that's how I do my looping. Yeah, it's just that, honestly, I use Ableton in its like most truest form.
You know what? That's the best thing. I think sometimes people can overcomplicate it for the sake of overcomplicating when it's so not necessary.
Yeah, I see people with like all these Max for Live patches and Cliff X Pro and I think that's cool, but I don't need that. And I'm fine with that as well. Like, touch wood, Xylo, right? I have never had a crash on stage. So, and I played a lot of shows. My project's solid. It's on 9% CPU. It's all a compromise. Maybe up to 11, 12%. No third-party plugins, really, really important.
Yeah.
Like majorly stressed to anybody who has got like a lot of third-party MIDI sounds to resample them and put them into Simpler Sampler. Yeah, I just use Ableton in the true form. Obviously, I am keen to like experiment with like CliffX and whatever, but I don't know, I don't need to. So
yeah, oh no.
I think like some people think it's like this massive mystery. It's like, looping, how it's really not. And I filmed this tutorial with Ableton, made in Ableton Live series, and I really purposely thought, I'm going to use as little gear as I want. So I'm going to use an SM58. That's never my choice of mic to sing and do a video with. I'm going to use, I'm not going to do my TC Helicon. I'm just going to use my 2 little MIDI controllers, which are fairly reasonably priced. 1 synthesizer. Obviously, I was using Push 2. And obviously people come, you need Push to do this. You don't need Push to do it. Yes, it's great. It's my preferred controller. But I didn't have Push for years. I had the Novation, I had the APC, but for anyone who, wants to take out the mystery of live loop in that video. I think people have said it's really helped.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that in this episode. I'm sure that'll be really good.
So I tried to explain everything in that, but you can see how it's actually kind of simple. Yeah, no crazy stuff going on, just using Ableton in its truest form.
Love it. So good. Yeah, no, that's really good to hear. And I think you've covered most of, what I wanted to talk about and more, which is really great. And we also have some questions from our audience.
Cool.
So we have one from Kelly and Buckley from London. So Kelly asked, what are your tips on the easiest and quickest way to set up a live performance?
So definitely save yourself the stress and save up for a decent audio interface. That's really important. If you want to go on stage, if you just want to perform on social media, then that's actually fine. You don't need a flash one.
Yeah. No, okay. So you were saying get a decent audio interface.
Yeah, I'd say that's really important. The quickest way, God, that's actually thrown me a bit.
I mean, I guess it can really depend on how complex you want.
It depends what you want to do. Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, from when I first started performing live, I remember the first setup I had was so much MIDI stuff. I'd mapped everything, and then I went to the show, and I looked like I had no idea what I was doing because I'd forgotten things with the crowd in front of me. And it was kind of like a performance that I didn't care too much about, which was fine. But I remember from that point, I was like, you know what? I think it's better to simplify and then kind of get more complex as you go rather than trying to start up there and then going crazy. And because at the end of the day, I think sometimes people don't realize that it's a performance and people want to see you enjoy yourself as well. If you're super stressed on stage, that's not fun for anyone to watch.
I just couldn't agree with you more there, Xylo. Minimise to maximise. But that's made me, thank you, that's kind of prompted me to help answer Kelly's question. Yeah, I think it depends what you want to do, but I think start small and grow. And the quickest way you could probably do that is to export yourself. What I would do is get your music production that you want to play live, listen to it, think about the stuff you can play live, take them out of that track, then get yourself one MIDI controller with those sounds that you've taken out to play and perform live with, or a little synth, and really just try and build up from there. So just start with a beef up track, your backing track, with parts removed, what you can play and perform live a long time. That is a good way to start. And like you said, just build from that. And then obviously, but you do need, it depends. And you've got to think about what your lead instrument is as well. Because I don't know if you sing, Kelly, or if you play saxophone, whatever. So it's about thinking about what is the focus of your performance as well. I wouldn't say there's a quick route, but I would say, start off with, like you said, a bit of your track that you've already produced. Take out the parts that you think you could play live and then go from there.
No, that sounds good. And we have another question from Alice Rocks. So Alice asks, how do you set up a performance so that you're not looking at your controllers all the time? And do you have any tips on mapping your controllers in a way that makes sense?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with any tips on mapping that make sense. So basically I try to, for every performance I do, I try to keep certain things in certain places. So like the filters will always be at the top of the MIDI fighter. The vocal sends, they're the ones that I need to reach easiest and most often. So I keep them closest to me, and they're always like 1, 2, and 3 on the Akai LPT8. So I think, and what I do is write down every mapping in a little book. So if I forget, I just come back and look. But it's about having a system where maybe, like you said, one set here is the filters. The next set is the monitoring. The next set is the sound effects. The next set is, miscellaneous, like click track, whatever, things like that. So just build your own little system that you use all the time. And then it does become second nature. You'll just know where that knob is, if that makes sense. And then not looking at your controllers the whole time. So that's where, this performance thing comes in handy. Like this performance conceptualizing is important. You need to think, right, there's elements of the show that I want to get techie and nerdy on. There's elements there where I just want to perform. And that's where I'll trigger a scene which has a set structure and I can just sing or play, you know? So it's really about making sure there's a balance between tech, then maybe just drop a scene where you just rock out and dance.
Yeah.
You know?
It. Yeah.
So rather than, staring at them the whole time, because it's not very interesting for the audience to watch. I learned this the hard way as well. Like, I think the first performance I did when I was doing a bit of looping and stuff outside of YouTube, I really learned that. I was like, damn, there's no cameras here. And I've got a room full of people and they don't have a clue what I'm doing and they can't see either. So you really have to balance that out with technology versus interaction.
Cool. No, that's useful. And the last question we have is from Hadley George. So Hadley asked, what is your favorite outboard synth and why?
And why? Oh my gosh, that is a really hard question, Hadley.
Can only choose one.
Oh my God. I don't know. That is really difficult to choose. Like, obviously, for live performance, I'm going to pick something different. For my live performances, I love that Yamaha Reface because it's small, it's light, it has loads of different sounds. You can make your own sounds, you can save your own sounds. That one's great. I recommend that for live stuff if you want to get going. But right now, my favourite is probably the OP1.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
I only got it in March, so I'm still a bit of a newbie to it. But I just think it's brilliant. Small again. It is really versatile and it's also got this little screen and it's just really, really fun. So right now, that one is my favourite.
Okay.
I think.
OP1. Okay, cool.
Yeah, OP1. It's I don't think anyone who invests in that would regret it. It's just like, it's an adult, like, well, not even adult. It's just like a great music toy, but that also sounds amazing. It's like a toy and an instrument, but it does sound amazing. You know how like some synths can be like my Prophet, for example, it's just got like loads of knobs and it's kind of like, it's great, you know, I love it. But it's like, the OP1 is a toy. It's like, yeah, come and play with me.
Yeah. Cool. No, that's fine.
So I recommend that, definitely.
Cool. All right. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for being with us on this episode. And I know I've learned so much and I'm sure our audience has as well. And especially in the middle of, all this kind of projects that are going on. So it's amazing. So do you have much else on today?
Well, you know what? This is actually really good that we did this interview today because yesterday and today I've been setting up a workshop on Push 2. So I actually think this has been the perfect timing because I've been back in the bit of the live world only the last 2 days. So obviously I haven't done a show for a long time. So I think if we'd done this a while ago, I mean, I just feel a little bit fresher in my head with it, seeing as I've been performing with Push the last day or so. So I think it's good timing that we've done that.
Awesome. So, thank you again. And
no worries. Thanks for having me, Xylo.
A pleasure, Rachel. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Brilliant.
Okay, bye.
Bye.